Welcome. Okay, so just a few disclaimers before we fully get started. One, I only just finished my second year. I don't actually know what happens in your third, fourth, fifth, sixth, so on years. But I am dubbing this as a sort of PhD timeline because I sort of know I have an idea what's ahead of me, but I want to record fully like a good sort of like first and second year basis because I think those are pretty similar throughout most programs. Um, so I want to focus on that and then delve into third, fourth plus years just a little bit at the end. And then another disclaimer is that this is sort of specific to my institution, which is University of Nebraska Lincoln. I think though that the first 2 years is very similar based on the people that I've talked to with different programs. I think it's good enough for other people to see, but I need to clickbait. That's basically what I'm doing. I am saying I clickbaited you. Welcome to this video. Alright, so for your first year, you just entered graduate school. They're not gonna have you doing research quite yet, unless you're already doing that from undergrad and it's just carrying over. But your first year in a math PhD is just you taking classes. It's gonna seem like it's undergrad again, and you're not really doing much research. You're just relearning some stuff, maybe you're seeing new stuff, maybe this is just the same stuff but more rigorous. This is where you sort of learn how to really talk about mathematics in like a really clean way. So at UNL, there are two first year sort of chunks of classes. There is the first chunk, algebra, topology, and discrete mathematics. And then there's the other group, analysis, differential equations, and applied math. At UNL, that third subject, applied math, doesn't really get offered anymore, so you really only have two options there, either analysis or differential equations. But for my program, you're required to take at least one subject from each chunk, and you have to complete 3 subjects at some point in your first or second year. Usually people complete it within the first year. But yeah, so you take 3 classes in total. You usually end up taking 4, like you take another one your second year, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But your first year is dedicated to you being a student. You will be taking those classes, you will be outputting more clean work than you probably have been used to in undergrad, at least for me. I handwrote a lot of my homeworks in undergrad, and in grad school, you are heavily suggested to type up your homework, to tech it up, not just Word document it, you gotta learn tech. And that's usually your first year. At UNL, it is a really nice school because usually your graduate assistantship, the reason why you're not paying as much for grad school for your PhD program is because you teach. And so your first year at UNL, you actually get to be a recitation leader. In undergrad, we called it a discussion leader, but here it's called a recitation leader. It is basically a sort of, there's the lecture where the professor, the main instructor, handles the instruction, and then there's you in the recitation where you have a smaller group of students. You get to do a lot of active learning. You get to really show them like practice problems, like problems that they'll see on the homework, problems that they'll see on quizzes and exams, and you get to really help them out like one-on-one at that point because it's a much smaller classroom. And you get to learn that. You get to learn how to teach, you get to learn how to interact with students in your first year. You do get a lot of help with teaching. They do have a lot of meetings, we do have a lot of orientation stuff. So we try our best to like help each other out, student to student, graduate student, instructor to graduate student. We try to really help people get used to doing teaching stuff. And I think UNL does a really good job at that. Okay, so besides taking classes, teaching, recitations, the other thing that you really gotta do in your first year is to make friends. This is when you get into the department. This is when you have your first step into graduate level sort of spheres. So this is the time when you're supposed to like talk to people. Don't sit in your office working alone. Go out to the lounge, bring your like laptop, bring your like notepad out there, and see if somebody else is working on the homework. Talk to them, have lunch with them, do all this and that. Don't be alone. Like this is the time when you're supposed to really build the foundations of what's gonna happen for the rest of your time at graduate school. And so if you stick the landing in your first year, you are gonna have a wonderful time for the rest of your graduate school experience. So let's say you just finished your first year, you are ending it at least, maybe. You are supposed to take a qualifying exam at some point. There are two qualifying exams for UNL. You have to take one in different subjects. It doesn't have to be in that one chunk here, one chunk there situation as with the classes itself. You can take your two subjects within this chunk or within this chunk, and you should be fine. I ended up doing both of my qualifying exams in just one chunk. I took analysis and differential equations. So that was my qualifying exam. I had to take those two subjects, and I took 3 tries. So let's take off that myth. There's really no danger, at least for UNL, for you to not pass your qualifying exams on your first try. I took analysis 3 times. I failed 2 times. Fail. I didn't pass. I didn't get the qualifying level on 2 tries of them. And then on my third try, I finally got it. And so it's fine if you don't qual, if you don't get a Q on your first try, just take it again and again. So you're not really in any danger until you hit later on into the program. But usually at that point, it's not going to be an issue. Usually people finish within the first 2 years, maybe 3, for their qualifying exams. So yeah, that's what you usually do at the end of your first year. You take those qualifying exams. What ends up happening is that the first, like after your finals week, you will have a week of a break and then a week of a cram session of study time, and then the week after is when you take your qualifying exams. So you have pretty much technically 2 weeks to study, but I suggest not pushing 2 whole weeks of studying. That seems like a lot of studying. But yeah, you take your qualifying exams then, and then that's it. You hear back about your results a month after. So let's talk a bit about summer. Now this part isn't required, unlike the qualifying exams. This part is, I think, UNL specific. I don't know if other programs do this, but it's called the math literature class during summer, where you sort of partner up with a instructor, a faculty instructor, and you ask them for a paper that they recommend. Usually these instructors already have like a treasure trove of like papers that are sort of nice for newly graduate students to like read and like understand and dissect. So you partner up with the instructor. They tell you, hey, read this paper. This one's interesting, and it's like aligned with your interests. Or maybe it's not. Maybe you're just trying to figure out if that's what you want. And you just spend summer reading it. Not really the entirety of summer. You spent like 2 weeks trying to deconstruct it, try to understand it. Then you present it in like a short format, and then you present it again in a long format. Maybe vice versa. You get to decide. But that is math literature. You will read a math literature, then you will present that math literature. Although mine was a bit hard, it was a 27-page paper, really condensed, and I only got to like maybe 7 pages, and that was enough to fill in like an hour of a presentation. So there's no pressure for you to take this class; it's not required. But I think it's a really good class to have, and if like other guidance programs watching this want to implement that, I think it's a really helpful class, especially during summer. I think it's something to do if you're not doing anything else. So other things that you could do during summer is to teach summer classes. I personally didn't teach during summer my first summer. I helped as a TA for this shorter class, and then that allowed me time. I helped with research during summer, and so that got my foot in the door with sort of like the math education sphere at UNL. And that was pretty much what my summer was. Second year, you are going to be orientated to help you get ready to teach your own class as the instructor of record, meaning you're not going to be an assistant. You're not going to just help students learn material that another person has taught them. You are going to be teaching these students. You are going to be in charge of their not really in charge of their learning. It's sort of like a mutual relationship of like half and half, you know. But that happens in your second year. And to some people, that is a very enticing thing to hear about, aka me. That's the reason why I ended up here, because I wanted to teach my second year. But to some people, that seems really scary because it's just like you're teaching in your second year of grad school. College algebra usually, or intermediate algebra, they don't start you off with calculus. That seems like a lot of work. But it also gets you sort of in a safer environment to like mess around, to like think through what are the things that you're doing for this class, and is it helpful for your students? Is it doing this and that? And at the same time that you're first taking your class, you're first teaching your class, you're also taking a pedagogy class that pairs well with those classes that you're teaching. In that pedagogy class, you're going to be talking about uh, are you doing like what are these techniques? What are these like theories that are like developed throughout the years? What are some things to like figure out when you're teaching these students? And so you're not sort of just thrown off the board to like swim on your own to teach these classes. You are helped quite a bit. These are what we call the convened courses, meaning that there is somebody higher up than you that will be able to help guide you through um, teaching, basically. And there's a lot of material. There's a lot of like pre-made lessons plans. There's a lot of pre-made material. You do not have to really do much besides prepare yourself mentally that you're gonna be teaching your own class. And that's the main sort of difference between first and second years, that you're no longer an assistant-ish, you're no longer a recitation leader, you are your own full-on teacher. Meaning at the end of the semester, you are gonna have to click that button that says submit grades, which is a very, very scary thing to do. But besides that, you're going to be taking classes again. Some of my classmates ended up doing reading courses their second year, meaning that you just work one on one with an instructor and you just talk through maybe a textbook, maybe a research paper. You learn through that method where you just delve into more subjects. Maybe you wanted to learn more about this subject. Maybe you didn't quite succeed in passing 3 courses your first year, so you want to like make that up and like take a different course sequence that maybe you'll have a better time in, and stuff like that. There are many different reasons. All of them are valid. Nobody really judges you if you take another 800 level class. I ended up taking another 800 sequence class. I took algebra my second year. This is sort of when you're kind of nudged towards like, hey, what are you interested in? Like this is when like you're sort of expected to go to more seminars to like dip your toe into like these subjects to figure out if you like that subject or not. Now, it is not expected of you, it is not really required of you to actually have an advisor at this point, but you can start looking for an advisor at your second year. Some students actually started finding those in their first year. I think there is a myth that says that you must pass your qualifying exams to get an advisor. I believe that is a myth. I believe for my program, you cannot make a committee if you haven't passed your quals, but you can most certainly get an advisor that will advise you. And something that I didn't really talk about the first year segment is that you get a pre-advisor, you get a faculty member who will just help you. They are just there to like help you with questions that you have, concerns that you have. They're supposed to like help you with the administrative stuff, being like, hey, register for classes, or like they ask you like, what have you taken in undergrad, what are you interested in, and then they kind of urge you to like take these 3 classes for your first year. Maybe they tell you that, oh, you've already like taken that sort of level of algebra, maybe you should skip to the 900 level class, the second year sequence of that subject. So those are when the pre-advisors sort of come in. And then your second year is sort of like when your pre-advisor will start nudging you towards like, hey, let me help you find your full-time advisor. Let's figure out what you're interested in. Let's figure out who you're gonna work well with. Let's do this and that. And so that sort of happens in your second year. And so there's mainly 2 things that you're taking away from your second year of grad school. It is that you're going to try and find an advisor. You don't have to find an advisor quite yet, but you're going to try and start that. And then also learning how to teach your own class. And that is your second year. And if you haven't passed quals yet, if you haven't passed your 2 quals, that's when you also take it. That's when you also take more quals in your second year. So if you pass your quals, if you have an advisor, if you have a committee, this is when you take the second sort of set of exams that the PhD program has you taking. They're called the comprehensive exams. There's 2 of them. One has to be a written exam, and then the other one can be a written or an oral presentation. But the written comprehensive exam is usually based on a 900 second year level class that you have taken. So that would either be measure theory, that would either be the commutative algebra class that you take, that could be like a higher level topology, that could be a higher level discrete class. So it doesn't have to be standardized. This depends completely on you and your committee and to know what you want to be tested on. I, for example, will probably be taking a partial differential equations and functional analysis mixture of a comprehensive exam, and then written, and then an oral comprehensive exam. So that would be my comprehensive exam. But I'm not worried about that my second year, even though I finished my second year. That is going to be a third year concern. While my other classmates are already studying for their comprehensive exams, I'm not. And there's no pressure for you to take your comprehensive exams at the end of your second year. There's really no pressure for that. And again, I think I've sort of reiterated that there's no pressure, at least for this school, for you to meet these sort of standards alongside your classmates. It is fine if some students get ahead of you. It is fine if some students are behind you. That is completely normal. That is fine. People move at different paces, and I think the school understands that people move at different paces. I think that's pretty much all of first and second year. So let's talk about the future, the things that I haven't experienced yet. So we're gonna be in territory of speculation, of like theory based on older grad students. I sort of have an idea of what it's gonna be. So your third year, you're probably gonna have an advisor at this point, or you're still trying to finish your qualifying exams. Either or, it's gonna be fine. Okay, this is usually, I think this is when they have like a hard urge for you to be like, find an advisor. Maybe not a committee yet, but just find an advisor. Even if you haven't finished your quals, just find an advisor that's gonna work with you. And then as soon as you finish your quals, then you like start talking about like committees and stuff like that. Let's enter the third year on the framework that you have an advisor, that you have done your qualifying exams and that you're done with those. So what do you do then? Well, your advisor will probably tell you what you're gonna do. Either take more classes, either do reading courses with this advisor so you have more of a targeted education at this point, a targeted like way of learning. And then they're gonna have you talk about your comprehensive exams. What do you want to have on there? What do you not want to have on there? How do you want to be tested? Do you want to do an oral comp or do you want to do a second written comp? And so there's sort of that sort of dialogue that you're gonna have with your advisor. So I'm cheating here and saying that I know what's gonna happen your third year because it's different for everybody, but your third year is usually more catered to you and your advisor and between what you talk about. For me though, my third year is looking out to be one math class, one research method class, and then one reading class, one reading course. And those are my three classes. And I'm going to be teaching still. Now, I think from here on out, you're either going to do a recitation or maybe your own class. Depends on where they need you. It's pretty much third year. You're going to be looking at that stuff. If you already have an advisor, if you already finish your comps, then actually no. This doesn't have to happen right after your comps. This can happen alongside your comps. You could be reading stuff about your research, about what you're going to do. Basically, after your second year, basically where I'm at, you're free to really cater your education, your time in grad school to what you need to do to have a PhD. So these like timeline videos aren't necessarily going to be helpful for you because at some point you will diverge from the usual path. You will diverge from my path, you will diverge from your classmates' path, and at some point it's gonna be fine because you're gonna have an advisor there. This was a fun video that I wanted to make in a sequence of long other videos that I have about grad school, that I just wanted to formalize my thoughts, and I think it'd be helpful because I think going to grad school or applying to grad school, one video that I watched that really cemented like my desire, my sort of thought process of like I want to apply to UNL was me watching a video sort of like this to talk about, hey, you get to teach your second year. And that was to me like what sold me. I was like, I want to teach my second year so then I can find out if I want to do this for the rest of my life. And then I found out I want to do it for the rest of my life. And now I just have to finish at some point and that's it. I hope it was helpful though. I know I only really talked about the first 2 years very specifically, and then the third and plus, I was like, talk to your advisor about it. But that's pretty much how it goes. Talk to your advisor about it. I'll see y'all later. Maybe I'll make another video once I finish third year and talk about how wrong I was about third year and fourth year and above. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. And if you have any questions, just leave it in the description or in the comments down below, and I will answer them because I love to talk. And so, peace.